couple of years ago now. He's had some big results over the time. We used to see a lot of him too as an amateur, and we saw him a lot as well. At the moment, we're just on 47 kilometers from the finish today. We've had just the 2 small sprints along the road, and they've been won by the members of the Breakaway. It's 112 miles or 181 kilometers today, and it's a question of just keep the Atlantic on your left, and I don't think you will get lost all the way up to Bordeaux. Here we are looking at Salvatore Comessa. I was actually reporting on him, Paul, when he won his very first bike race in South Africa, town called Durbanville, just outside of Cape Town. This young team came with this new young superstar, and boy, could he sprint, and he snatched the second stage of what they call the Giro del Capo, the Tour of the Cape, and that was the first time I'd seen him race.
And funnily enough, I was covering a race in South Africa called the Rapport Tour, when he was actually ejected from the race from having a fist fight with another rider. He's always been a very fiery character. He comes from Naples, and the people from around there can have very hot tempers. And Salvatore Comessa certainly is one of those guys. But he has been national road racing champion of his own country. He's a great bike rider, and he was champion on 2 occasions. And I reckon if it comes down to a sprint towards the end, he'd be looking for the win, because he's also won 2 stages in the Tour de France, and one of those was in Freiburg, Germany, and that was just in front of a Telecom rider by the name of Alexander Vinokourov. And Telecom so seriously wanted to win on that occasion because they wanted to win on home turf, and Comessa didn't hand out any favours.
No, he's not had a great season. He's been there and thereabouts. It doesn't seem like yesterday since he did turn professional, but in fact it was 1998. He's had no good results this year, but that doesn't always mean you're having a bad season. Very often you're in the charge of your team leaders and work your heart out, and if they have success, your season enjoys the same results, because all prize money in professional cycling goes into the kitty, and all the staff get paid out certain proportions of it at the end of the season.
Alexander Vinokourov.
He had to work yesterday, Paul, to chase that group down because he was concerned Tyler Hamilton was getting too close.
Well, if Tyler Hamilton would have been just a couple of minutes closer to the position of Alexander Vinokourov, I think Hamilton would have had a serious chance of getting himself a podium finish in this Tour de France. That's why Team Telecom really had to put the hammer down in the last part of the race yesterday. And in fact, Hamilton lost almost 2 minutes in the last 10 kilometers of the race. But the 25 kilometers before that, they had a hard time taking a minute off his advantage.
I'll tell you what, I don't know if you noticed, but when he tried to come onto the podium yesterday, his legs were clearly pained, and I think in those last 10 kilometers hurt him.
I'm not surprised. That was an unbelievable performance. It's reminiscent of the performance by Claudio Chiappucci on a massive breakaway that he did in the early 90s over most of the Alpine passes for a stage win up in the summit of the mountain called Sestriere. That was just across the Italian border, not far from Briançon.
Well, you can see here the boys in green and white are still working away to bring this down. There's the grapes of next year's crop, well, this year's crop, and we'll take a break here on OLN, and there'll be no bigger when we get back.
Benvenuto più di più, benvenuto al cameriere che non serve a chi non siede, benvenuto al corteggiare, benvenuto al commediare, benvenuto presidente che non presidiavi niente, benvenuto col palto, benvenuto a Serrano,
leggenda innovativa,
benvenuto col colbacco nero, me ne faccio un baffo, benvenuto ai giocolieri.
And welcome back. We're watching the exclusive coverage here on OLN of the 2003 Tour de France. We are stage 17, finishing here in Bordeaux, France. And we're going to get back to the action of the stage and Phil and Paul in just a few minutes. But right now, I wanted to talk to Mr. Bob Roll about some of the races within the race. Now, we're seeing a long breakaway as expected during the stage since it's very flat. But why do sometimes the breakaways get caught and sometimes they don't?
People oftentimes wonder how come one breakaway works and another one gets caught. And there's a couple of reasons. It depends on who's in the breakaway initially. If there's a GC contender and it's a flat stage, the peloton chases flat out. They try to limit that breakaway. They don't want to give a GC rider any times. And the first 20 places in the Tour are so closely contested. If anybody that's close to that is in a break, they will displace somebody in the top 10. So that team will chase down the breakaway. And another one, if any other jerseys are on offer, like the green jersey, if that's in the breakaway, the other sprinters teams will try to chase. And oftentimes you see a sprinter trying to go in a breakaway, but those breaks are almost inevitably caught, or that rider doesn't win, because everyone knows if they take a sprinter to the line, they are going to lose the race. And for these riders in the breakaway, they have no hopes on the general classification, so they're going for a stage win. So they have to do everything in their power to win that stage. And if a sprinter is in the group, there's absolutely no way that they're going to win. So they won't cooperate at all. If a GC man is up there, everyone in the peloton chases.
Breaking it down for all of us, Mr. Bob Roll. Well, before we get back to the action, Bob, have you ever had thousands of pounds of bowls snorting down your neck?
Not since high school.
Not since high school. Well, you can experience the running of the bowls from the comfort of your own sofa every weeknight on OLN. That's at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. All right, let's get back to the action with Phil and Paul, guys.
Thanks very much, Kirsten and Bob. As we look at the face here, Salvatore Camesso still cruising the peloton, still working in this breakaway. Medri Con is the rider just passing through our screen there. Salvatore Camesso, 88 in the overall, lost 2 hours and 38 minutes so far, but he's going to Paris yet again in the Tour de France. Well, Paul, you are beginning to think that this breakaway might succeed.
Well, the front end of the main field is not really cranking it up right now. I think they seem to have lost the impetus. They originally were very worried about the 16.5-minute advantage, and now they've brought it down to 8 minutes. The teams that were concerned about their men in the top 10 losing their places have actually switched off the pacemaking, so it seems to have leveled out right now at 8.5 minutes, the gap between these 10 and the main field, and nobody else really seems to be worried about coming to the front and turning up the screw, so I think they're going to survive.
Well, these riders will hope they've chosen the right day to go out and attack, because a stage win for any of these riders would turn a mediocre Tour de France, if you like, into a tremendously successful one. Ivan Parra, who had some great legs. You may remember this was the rider on the attack going into Gap and really thought he was going to win the stage. And then up came Joshiba Bolocki and everybody, that as they wiped him out, as Lance Armstrong and Bolocki were chasing Alexander Vinokurov over those last 5 kilometers. And they went so fast, of course, Armstrong went across the fields and Bolocki hit the ground and out of the race. And Parra was washed away in the melee. But he has had an extremely good tour. Number of attacking rides. He deserves success.
He certainly does. A great bike rider. He's a young Colombian rider on the way up, and Colombian journalists are expecting him to be the new Colombian star of the future. A little bit disappointing in the performance of the other Colombian in the Tour de France this year on the Telecom squad, Santiago Botero. He was tipped before the start as a possible top 3 finisher, but he never really found the form that he had last year and the year before, where he has finished 4th in the overall classification. And of course, a couple of years ago, he won the King of the Mountains competition as well.
Face of Udo Boltz here, the oldest man in the race, and this will be his last Tour de France, he says. He's been a great rider in the Tour de France. He's also tried his hand at Ironman triathlons and done extremely well. Of course, as you can imagine, he was pretty quick in the bicycle section and pretty far off the back in the swim section.
Yeah, but it's pretty impressive to think that Udo Boltz rode the Hawaiian Ironman after having taken part in the Tour de France. It's so very difficult for these guys to do anything else apart from ride their bikes. The body gets used to doing exactly the same thing every day. This is concentration now on the face of Jan Ullrich. He's thinking about Saturday. That's all he's got in his mind over the next couple of days. The next 48 hours are going to be so important for him and the man he's riding alongside there, Lance Armstrong, because these two riders both realize that Saturday's time trial, we talked about the time trial around Gaillac as being the most important time trial in the career of Lance Armstrong. I have a feeling I'm going to have to change my feelings there, because this one on Saturday from Pornic to Nantes is going to be exceptionally important.
Just a watering here of the fields around the area. Probably pulling this irrigation straight out of the ocean, not too far away. The speeding heads of the peloton, they're looking for 10 men. They're on the wanted notice. We'll take a break. See you back in a moment. And welcome back. They're the grapes of some of the famous wine-growing region in the world, Bordeaux, and all the chateaus abound here with their own brand of the famous red wine here. The peloton are not going to catch the breakaway. It's a bold prediction, isn't it? But they're starting to nudge up again now. 9 minutes and 2 seconds, and the time is running out. Well, there'll be a lot of disappointed sprinters in this field, Paul, but there's no way now, with a lead of 9 minutes, they're going to bring those back.
No, a lot of the teams are very fatigued. We saw that in the chase behind Tyler Hamilton yesterday. A team like Team Telecom in the early part of the Tour de France would have been able to pull him back quite easily with the firepower that they had. But it seems to me as if you just looked at the faces on the riders of Team Telecom when they were chasing yesterday, Giuseppe Guerini was in all kinds of agony just trying to keep the pace up at 45 kilometers an hour. It was a moment of stress for the whole Telecom team, and I think it's the same here for these guys. Jean de la Tour tried to get the pacemaking organised for their man Jean-Patrick Nazon, but now you can see they've realised they're not going to pull back the breakaway right now, and they've turned off the chase.
Well, there's a little bit of dampness on the road. I don't think it's raining just now. They passed through the shower. It's a bit cloudy at the finish line at the moment. Medric Clan gone back for a drink and a little bit of extra hang on there just to give him a bit of a push back into the pack. And looking down here, the Française de Jeux rider is Christophe Mangeon, and he could be the man to win this. He's a very good sprinter in a small group like this. If it comes down to the sprint, I don't think it will. I think there'll be a number of riders will try and attack, and it won't be much longer before they start having a go, because they will know now that as they're nudging it up to 9:05 that they have a chance here of winning a stage. Some have won stages before, like this rider here has won a couple, in fact. Salvatore Camesso. Seiko could do with another stage win. Simone won for them the other day in the mountains.
And that man just handing up the drink there, by the way, in the Seiko team car. He's won a couple of stages in the Tour de France as well, Guido Bontempi. And you've commented on many a sprint finish by that big man.
He was a very fast finisher. Spoilt the fun for many riders when he won his sprints. Go on, Paul, yeah.
Yeah, we're just hearing, in fact, Seiko have prolonged the contract of Gilberto Simone for another 2 years. And that's because of his performance in the Giro d'Italia. In fact, strangely enough, he came in with the back group yesterday, having won a mountain stage at the Tour. He seems to really be suffering. But I take my hat off to him for staying in the bike race, because there were so many rumours as we got up to the rest day about him going to pull out of the race.
Medric Clan here, pulling face. He's a teammate of Britain's David Miller. And David Miller saying in this morning's papers that this Tour has certainly not gone according to his dreams that he had for it. Very demoralised, finishing in the back group almost last yesterday. And although he is apparently ill with some bronchitis, there's no doubt he's demoralised as well.
Certainly very demoralised. Thought he was going to win the opening day's prologue, and due to a mechanical incident, he lost by 0.08 of a second. And from that moment onwards, Phil, his Tour de France seemed to go down. He never really got back into it psychologically.
No, there's no doubt he's got the ability physically, but he's got to convert that on the road and get results. Still time on his side, though, and some riders have great seasons. Look at Tyler Hamilton. No doubt he's a good bike rider, but this year he's had a magical year, winning Liège-Bastogne-Liège and the Amstel Race, the Tour of Romandy, and now, of course, a stage of the Tour de France.
I can't wait for the IMAX movie to come out, because there's been an IMAX movie made along the roads of the Tour de France, and the subject was none other than Tyler Hamilton. And I don't think they could have picked another subject at all as good as that, because the idea of the film was to see how the brain reacted to pain. Well, that's the finest example, especially what we saw yesterday.
Absolutely. Nice little split for us here as the riders come back together, form a diamond. But you can see that peloton is nowhere like going quick enough now. It's still going up. It's 9:15 even now. It's nudging up all of the time. There's a number of time checks coming at us at the moment from the race, from the computer. They always vary slightly, but basically they're pretty accurate. And we're in our last 20 miles to go, or 32 kilometers. We're going to get 2 sprints today, 10 riders in the breakaway. There are green jersey points, Paul, for the rest of the peloton. So it's very important that Baden Cook, Robin McHugh and Eric Zabel do get mixed up in the next bunch sprint. There's the peloton. Big peloton. As far as we know, there's nobody behind the race, but there are 10 riders in front, and it is still stretching. There's Medric Clan. How are you going? We'll be back in a moment. Not well, apparently. Welcome back. We're just having workers' play time at the moment on the Tour de France as the breakaway is heading towards us. 10 riders are still in the lead. They know now they are going to win the stage. There's a little bit of beauty of the Tour de France and another example as how everybody takes part in this wonderful race. Well, our Frankie Andrea once rode the Tour de France, not once but quite a few times, and now he's going to take a look at some of the latest in team equipment. Frankie.
When a team comes to the Tour de France, they have to prepare for 3 weeks worth of racing. This means a massive amount of equipment to outfit 9 riders for the Tour de France. I talked with Seiko, Credit Agricole, and Telecom, and much of their equipment needs were very similar. Let's take Telecom, for example. They bring 25 road bikes, 18 time trial bikes, and 24 disc wheels. They have 3 different sets of wheels. They bring 25 pairs of each wheel. That's 75 wheels total. They also have 100 spare tubulars, and at the start of the Pyrenees, they just had another 100 shipped in. Also, they have 4 spare Campanello Gruppos, and they stress that no matter what they run out of, all they got to do is call the warehouse to get some more equipment shipped down. I'm not a tech head, but even I'm impressed with the amount of equipment that's inside of these trucks. If you take a conservative approach of $4,000 to $5,000 for each bike and the time trial bikes, along with maybe $300 for a pair of wheels, each truck contains $250,000 to $300,000 worth of equipment. This is a huge commitment from the teams to help try to get their Tour de France winners the ability to win stages.
Well, that's very interesting. Thanks a lot, Frankie, as we now look out of the helicopter at the peloton, wearing out all of those tubular tyres that Frankie was talking about. And they're still trying to hunt down these 10 men. 9 minutes 8. Now the question is, Paul, what will the sprinters do back in the main field? They're not going to have the day, but they've got to race for 11th position.
They've still got to race for that position, and there are 15 points for the man who crosses the line in 11th place. But the good thing about that competition is that the one difference in place when you get down that far in the positions is only 1 point. Whereas if you are sprinting for first place, there's a 5 or 6 point difference.
So if Robbie wins and gets 11th, then
Waden Cook has got to finish about 19th, and I don't think they're going to be separated by so many riders.
Will be tight, so it might work out well for them, but we'll see. It's going to be a very, very rapid sprint from the peloton, that's for sure, because really those big top sprinters have had no exercise apart from staying in the race rather than sprinting for well over a week with the mountains.
Well, Garcia Acosta here, number 33, the big rider in the orange, white and blue jersey of iBernesto.com, has started to work with this breakaway, and that may be why the advantage has started to increase.
He's got to be careful. If it goes back up to 10 minutes again, then he's actually putting his own teammate Mancebo out of 9th place overall, because it's now 9:08 and 28 kilometers to go to the finish. I don't think Francisco Mancebo will have too much nice to say about him at the finish if he does that to him.
Well, if he started working, it's because he's been given the okay by the team management. It's not the other riders in this breakaway who would be able to cajole him to start working. It would be his team manager who would make that call on the road. His team manager probably expects that the main field will pick up its pace in the last 15 kilometers as the sprinters start to prepare for the final sprint of the day.
Well, there's the man with most to gain today, an ascension in the overall for Peter Luttenberger. He's 18th in this race. He's currently up to 10th because of the time gains. So, you know, to go home and say you finished 10th in the Tour de France, that is a result, to say the least. It's a result that some British riders would like these days. We don't seem to have that much success. It's his 5th Tour, by the way, Peter Luttenberger. He didn't finish it last year. He gave up on the 14th stage. But he's always finished high. He's never finished lower than 21st overall, and that was in 2000. Best place 5th in 1996. Day off for Armstrong and Ulrich, separated by 1 minute and 7 seconds as they're being towed gently towards the time trial on Saturday. Tomorrow, another reasonably flat stage, not quite as flat as today, but it certainly will not present any problems to anybody. And they'll look to conserve all of the energy. I think they've more or less had a truce now to say, right, we are going to just let the time trial decide. One thing you will remember, of course, that Jan Ullrich waited when he knew that Armstrong had fallen on the climb up to Les Ardidons. Well, today the German Olympic Committee have awarded a medal to Jan Ullrich for fair play, which I think is very nice.
A very nice award, and I think going back many more years to the time of the World Championships on the track, a British team crossed the line in first place at the World Championships. And
Team pursuit, yeah.
It was the team pursuit, Ian Hallam, Mick Bennett. You'd remember the
Ian
others.
Hallam, Mick Bennett, Willie Moore and Ron Keeble. I think it was 1973. What happened was they were in the final against Germany in the 4,000 metres pursuit on the track. An official got too close to the trackside and he was clipped by the German team, and they all went down. They never crossed the line. The British did, and they were awarded the world title. At the time of the crash, the British were in fact losing the title, and the 4 British riders refused to go onto the podium, and as a result they were given this German Fair Play Award, which at the time was not just a medal, it was also an extremely nice Longines wristwatch, and they were very pleased. They were taken to Germany and feted.
It's great to have fair play in the sport, and that's the amazing thing about the sport of professional cycling. There are still an awful lot of gentlemen involved, including your dear self, Philip.
9:07 as the riders start to get the countdown here now. Up front, there's still be 25 kilometres to go. They're not going to lose 9 minutes, and they're going to start soon attacking one another. We'll be there when they do. See you in a moment. Welcome back to the Tour de France. This is the peloton, beaten today by a first kilometre breakaway. But they now have to come back and try and battle out for the sprints, because there's no problem. There's still places for the green jersey in the peloton when they race for when they race for the 11th place sprint today. Anyway, while we're taking a look here, one young rider here, Gather the Bottles for his big team man. We'll take a look at a young and up-and-coming rider, thanks to Infinity, accelerating the future. And today we have chosen Thor Hushovd. You know, he's only one of 9 Norwegians in the pro peloton, yet he's one of the strongest men in any race he rides in. He can rule, which means go on the flat. He is tremendous at the sprint finishes and even rivals his own teammate, Stuart O'Grady, in that battle for the green jersey competition. He's 6 feet tall, 25 years of age, and is a very, very big talent in this sport. The peloton closing up like a concertina, always a sign there's no big action at the front. It's for my money now, they're thinking of the sprint for 11th, the others are thinking of the sprint for the win. Now, Paul, at what stage can we expect now these riders to start attacking one another? Because it is a strange combination at the front there. For my money, Garcia Acosta will go. He always goes on his own, doesn't he?
He will have a go at some time. It's a bit too far to go to the finish right now, and it's a very difficult course to actually attack on or set an attack on, because it's very flat and it's a very fast run-in. I have a feeling that the Dutch riders, there are 3 Dutch riders in this leading group, will keep a very close eye on the attacks that are likely to come, and they will cover them one at a time. Leon Van Bon and Servais Knaven, for example, although they're riding on separate teams, they're actually pretty good buddies, and they've raced on the same team together on a number of occasions, and they are very clever tacticians, the Dutch, when it comes down to a breakaway situation like this.
Well, this is Ivan Parra. I don't think Ivan can expect to win the sprint. He'll have to put in a move. Bram de Groot, he'd fancy his chances today. He's had a 3rd place finish into Marseille, and well, really, if he got a win for Rabobank, they'd all feel very relieved, because the Dutch journalists and television here have had very little report of Dutch success. They've been relying heavily on success from Robbie McEwen, because he speaks fluent Flemish, which is a dialect, in fact, of Dutch, and he lives in Belgium, so they'd see that almost as a home success now for the Dutch-Belgian countries if Robbie could get a win.
Quite funny the other morning talking to one of the Belgian journalists, and they admitted that Robbie McEwen was Belgian when he was winning and Australian when he was losing.
It's a wonderful country, Belgium, a hotbed of cycling, and the spectators are such enthusiasts, it's unbelievable. Well, Gerolsteiner, Crédit Agricole, US Postal on the wings, off to the left, Celeste of Jan Ulrich off to the right, just sitting in the right position, nursing their leaders, but not really helping to the race. It's up to Gerolstein and Crédit Agricole here. We expect to see Française de Jeu start to look after Baden Cook very shortly. Robbie McEwen, who has a Lotto team around him, he's got none of them here. He lost his lead-out man yesterday, who retired, Nick Gates from New South Wales in Australia. He's got one man in the breakaway who might have tried to help him. So Robbie's going to have to work out how he's going to get through this field without help from the team today, I think.
It's going to be a close battle sprint for 11th place, and even though it's only 11th place, it is exceptionally important for the sprinters, because they have to make sure they get their points over the next few days. And I think the green jersey points competition, as seems to be becoming its habit nowadays, will only get decided with the final sprint on the Champs-Élysées. But, you know, looking down here at the speed of the main field, this has been a very fast Tour de France so far, Phil, because it is lining itself up to be possibly the fastest ever. In 1999, Armstrong recorded the fastest Tour at an average speed of 40.276 kilometers an hour. This year, at the moment, the average speed of the race is 40.232, but today's stage is over 45.5 kilometers an hour. So we're getting right up there, and with the fast, flat stages to come, it may well be that we'll set a brand new record time.
It all depends how they ride the first part of Sunday's stage to Paris. If they do it drinking champagne, they might lose all that they've done. If they race it to the Champs-Élysées, this could be the fastest Tour we've ever had. Certainly looks as a wrong course for a very fast one. Over 25 miles an hour, 40 kilometers around France, and some of the roads we've encountered this year, it really does make you wonder just how these guys do it. This is the breakaway. Let me remind you, if you are just joining us, that the 10 men got away in the opening kilometer of the race today. But the one man in the break with the most to gain, Peter Luttenberger, only 26 minutes behind. I say only because most riders are way down, more than an hour now. He started the day in 18th place. He's currently up to 10th overall.
Tactics are starting right now. You see the man at the back here, number 115, that's Knaven. He's decided and he's figured out right now that inside of the 20 kilometer to go banner, they've got a massive advantage of 8 minutes and 40 seconds. They are going to survive, and he stopped working at the front end, and he is waiting for the attacks to start. And as soon as he stopped working, I noticed that Leon van Bon did the same thing.
Well, we're looking at the field, getting themselves back together, thinking now of their place. They're racing for only 11th today. There they go. They've got a 25 kilometer banner up the road there. The peloton, the breakaways heading for 20 kilometers to go right now. Well, don't forget, what would you do for $100? Well, visit America's greatest beaches for all the fun of summer as Beach Ambush returns to OLN in August, and that's Sundays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The race goes on. We are going to be treated to 2 sprints today, the breakaway and the bunch, and let's hope it doesn't rain, but it could well do. We'll take a break on OLN. Rejoin us for more action on the Tour. And welcome back, and as you rejoin us, somebody has thrown the time bomb into the center of the leading group here, because now they are attacking one and each other, one after another. Whole flurry of attacks now, and they are just 15.7 kilometers from the finish. Right now we are running into the suburbs of Bordeaux, because the last 16 kilometers, they're just inside that now. There has been an attack by Sherwen Knaven. There is the 15 kilometers to go for Sherwen. It's going to take a strong man to hold off that breakaway. There's quite a lot of lively men back there.
This is an ideal course for a Dutchman as well, because it's completely flat, the course today, from Dax all the way up to Bordeaux, 112 miles, and it probably is very much reminiscent of the bike races in his own country. He's got an incredible turn of speed. I have noticed, though, that the man there in 4th position, you can just see the red and black jersey of Leon van Bon. He has not at all tried to counter the move. Vicente Garcia Acosta wants to go.
That's the Spanish rider who has specialised in the lone escapes. Vicente Garcia Acosta won the stage of the Tour in Draguignan 4 years ago. They were quickly on him, because I think every rider in the Tour de France knows that's his favourite move. Well, they're not on him. He's got away from them at the moment.
We used to keep a very close eye, though, on Van Bon. Van Bon is covering the moves. He's not chasing down the man in the front at all. He's a very good friend. These two riders train together. They've been on the same team together in the past. But right now, the advantage that this man has is there is no organised chase behind him. It's riders on their own trying to bridge the gap. See that clever move there, just looking underneath his shoulder. It keeps him down in an aerodynamic position, but he wants to make sure he can't see the shadow of somebody coming up to his wheel.
3 hours, 38 minutes. He is behind the overall lead of the Tour de France, so he's not going to change the destiny of the yellow jersey, but he is looking for a valued stage win in the Tour de France. The biggest win of the 21 wins he's had in his life, undoubtedly the win he had in Paris-Roubaix, the queen of the classic races in the year 2001. He's also won the Tour of Denmark overall, and he has been the national champion. But right now, he is speeding, and the riders are having to work out how they can get him. Well, he's got a face like Tyler Hamilton had when he won a stage yesterday, but the situation is a little bit different.
Had a good start to the season this year, but from the classics onwards, we very rarely spoke about Sherwen Knaven, but he seems to have come to this bike race in form, and it's quite interesting to note that his team, Quick Step Davitamon, are one of the 5 teams left in the race, still with a full complement of bike riders. What an incredible crowd have turned out here to see this race finish in Bordeaux. Another counter-attack coming again. It's a Dutchman, that's Bram de Groot, and he nearly lost it in that corner.
It's a tight one. That's a real tight bend, that, but they've got round it. Knaven riding his 7th Tour de France. He's never been a high finisher. He's not that sort of a riser, team worker, and he's taking his chance well here to try and slip away. Just under 14 kilometers to go for the leader.
Salvatore Camesso in the red jersey at the back. You see, this situation right now is a very strange situation. One rider at a time is trying to bridge the gap because they don't want to help anybody else come back into the race. And I still feel that you've got to keep a close eye on Van Bon, because he's just sitting there all of the time, not doing any effort to try and bridge the gap to the man who is leading this race. And if it all comes back together, I have to give my name down as Leon Van Bon as the winner of this race.
Oh, watch out for Salvatore Camesso. What we'll know, well, they're saying 13 kilometers to go now. Sherwen Knaven is trying to ride them all off his wheel. The only man who's suffered from this series of attacks is poor old Ivan Para. He's not got back. There are 8 riders chasing, and then there'll be a gap to Para, who is just dangling. There are the 8 men who are chasing. And it looks as though a little bit of this disorganisation here now. We're heading up towards Mérignac here. This is where the airport is in Bordeaux. I don't know where they put the traffic in this massive city, which is always heavily clogged with traffic. But the crowd don't care right now. They're enjoying the spectacle of the Tour de France coming into Bordeaux. There is Vicente Garcia Acosta back in the peloton. This was the site, by the way, where Davis Finney got his 2nd win in the Tour de France. Davis, a great bike rider, and used to commentate alongside me on the races in America, and was one of the world's fastest sprinters.
Stage 12 on that occasion when he got his win, and there was a nasty little crash inside the last bend. There's not going to be any worry about it being a bunch sprint this afternoon, because at 20 kilometers to go, the main field were 8 minutes and 20 seconds in arrears, so they're a long way back right now. Knaven, this is a do-or-die effort that he's putting in. He's got about 18 seconds advantage over the group behind him, but there's no organised chase. You see how he tried to use the motorbikes. We get a lot of questions about, do the riders get bothered by the motorbikes or the cars in a race like this? Well, they're real professionals. They will actually try and use the cars and motorbikes sometimes to their advantage, pulling across to the side of the road and leaving a small gap for a motorbike to come by, and that acceleration by the motorbike actually helps the rider a little bit on occasions like this.
There's Leon Van Bon, and there's Christophe Mangin, who also could win this race. But this has been a tremendous escape, you know, for Peter Luttenberger. At the moment, he is up into 9th place in the Tour de France from 18th. He's climbed an enormous number of places in this one escape. 10 kilometers to go now. He went at 17 kilometers to go, and there is the first time check. It said, I think, about 21 seconds.
It's a very tricky run in towards the finish as well, with a lot of corners and roundabouts, and that suits a lone man off the front of a group like this.
Here come the chasing 8 riders. Only Ivan Para has been dispatched from the back now as they try to work out how they can bring back Sherwen Knaven. The peloton, they're over 8 minutes back. We'll be back. And welcome back, and Sherwen Knaven is still looking for his first ever stage win in the Tour de France. He's nudging it away. 35 seconds now. Garcia Acosta goes as well, quickly chased by Leon Van Bon. One Dutchman after another one right now. The Dutch have had no successes yet in the Tour de France, as they now really scramble here. This breakaway had to come sooner or later. There is Garcia Acosta. As we see now, he's quickly joined by Leon Van Bon. Bram de Groot trying to get across as well. Looks like the 3 Dutch riders in the breakaway are going to fight it out for themselves today, as they go through the areas now just on the outskirts of the centre of Bordeaux. They still have 7 kilometers to go. The peloton washed away over 8 minutes. Still is the gap 39 seconds the lead, but the reaction coming at 7 kilometers to go. The 3 Dutchmen, Paul, they're desperate for a stage win. Holland is watching. Holland is a great cycling nation. They've had no success in this year's Tour.
It looks as if one Dutchman might be chasing another Dutchman right here, because I have a feeling just out of sight there is Christophe Mangin. We're concentrating on Christophe Mangin here, but just up the road, I think, is Leon Van Bon. There he is. He knows now that the stage victory is slipping away from him. He wants to get the win for Holland, but he rides for a Dutch team, strangely enough, but Mangin has made the junction.
Well, Van Bon was our pick, but Sherwen Knaven rather usurped that. Van Bon has won 2 stages in the Tour de France in the past, in Pau in '98 and in Tours, which is a big flat finish in the year 2000. Very similar finish to Bordeaux, in fact, and he's done the Tour 9 times.
Well, that series of accelerations there has reduced the advantage of Sherwen Knaven down to 23 seconds. It's a long way to go to survive in a breakaway like this, and he wanted to surprise everyone with an attack just a little bit too far out for my liking. He's really, now you can see the pain is starting to dig in. He's starting to roll the top off of his body. The attacks keep coming in this group behind. If they want to catch him, the best thing to do is to organize themselves. One rider needs to take the responsibility and encourage the riders to form 2 straight lines, so everybody again starts to work as they have done for the majority of this race. And if they do that, they can keep themselves riding at a fairly good average speed.
Well, this is very unusual for the Tour de France to come in this way from Dax, for example, to Bordeaux. And as you can see, now they're in the streets of the city with a long way still to go, in effect. There are many problems they've had to overcome with traffic obstacles, and a bit of a gamble by the organisation, I think, if all 140-odd riders have come thundering through the streets together, because they constantly have to be split up here as they go down these rather narrow roads. It's good at the moment, and this will be 5 kilometres to go. He's been away since 17. It must have seemed like a month in the saddle, because he's still just half a minute.
He's a strong bike rider. He's getting back into his rhythm right now, and still the attacks are coming behind him. Vicente Garcia Acosta's been caught out this time, and again, you take note of Leon Van Bon. He's not missed a move so far. We've got 2 Dutchmen here in second position. There is Bram de Groot there with Christophe Mangin, and it's the big Vicente Garcia Acosta who's trying to bring it all back together.
Well, he's just trying to hang on in there now. Those legs must be screaming. They're hovering at 25 seconds. There is a continued stream of attacks behind, but they haven't got the sustained effort to cross the gap. And if he just keeps this steady pace up, they might have a problem. They're saying at the 5 kilometre banner, 23 seconds now is the gap, and yo-yoing is Vicente Garcia Acosta. He's launched a couple of strong moves. Now he's having difficulty following. Christophe Mangin, Bram de Groot, Leon Van Bon and Paolo Bassoni are the riders in the first 4.
Just grappling back up to that group there was Salvatore Comesso.
It looks like he may be easing up there, Paul.
I think he's having a hard time staying with the pace that was being set on the front there by the young man from France, Christophe Mangin. But again, now that the group has reformed, they'll slow down just a little bit. That will give the advantage to the lone attacker. Every time they accelerate, they eat into his advantage, and then once they slow down again, he can build up. We're now inside 4 kilometres to go, and they're only 14 seconds in arrears. It's going to be very touch and go.
And little Médéric Clon, the Cofidis rider in that group, is still with that leading group. It's his first Tour de France. He's never won a race in his life. He's one of the new blood of French cycling, and he's in that main body of riders chasing. It looks as though Vicente has found his second pair of legs as he now pushes back onto the group at 4 kilometres to go. Sherwen Knaven has a real chance here. 7 Tours de France, just like another man who won yesterday and has never won a stage either.
Still got to survive. It's 14 seconds right now. Van Bon swings off. He's done his turn at the front. If you want to catch my fellow Dutchman, you guys had better work fast and hard right now. He is still holding on. He hasn't had a win since February, and that was in the Tour de Qatar. And these long, straight boulevards must seem interminable to him.
Well, the thing is, he's in Bordeaux. It just happens to be about 10 miles to the finishing line when you enter the outside, 16 kilometres. He'll note all the barriers now as he's going for the 3 kilometre banner here. 25 seconds is the gap. They are slowly inching back, but they're virtually racing at the same speed. This is a different finish than normal in Bordeaux because of the way we've had to approach the town from the south and then in from the west, from the airport side. And they can see him up the road, but can they nail him back?
Well, the big advantage he's got is you see these guys in this group, they keep accelerating, slowing down, and what it's doing is it's lowering their average speed, while he just keeps plugging away at the same speed all of the time, which is probably pretty close to 47 or 48 kilometers an hour. We will know the result in around about 4.5 minutes time, as they've gone inside 3 kilometers to go right now. You just saw him getting his hands on the inside of the handlebars. Van Bon is trying to slip away alone. He's actually doing a pretty good job here because he doesn't want to drag anybody else up.
Well, we're hearing actually directly from the race motorbikes now that the gap is 22 seconds as they continue to try and split. Van Bon has gone again. He won't be too popular. Yes, he's on a rival team, but he's the same nationality, and the Dutch want a victory, and they will be very unhappy if Dutch fought Dutch and an Italian one, for example.
Well, that could happen right now. This man is not going to give up either. You can see him just flying up to the front there, Christophe Mangin, and all the time, every time this group behind reforms, they just slow down a fraction, allowing this man to maybe get a couple more seconds lead. It's 24 seconds right now. He will be looking to try and see the last kilometer banner. When he sees that, if he's got 20 seconds, they're not going to see him again.
Well, Van Bon has never won a time trial in any race in the world, and this is probably the hottest time trial he's ever ridden right now, and we'd count that as a win, wouldn't we, if he did stay away. A 17-kilometer time trial is what he needs now, as he rushes through these beautiful tree-lined groves, heading towards the finish down by the City Hall on the banks of the river. And at the gap here, 3, 6, 8 of them have come back together again now. There's only Ivan Para and 22 seconds, the latest time check we've got. It is inching closer. It may not be enough, but when you get in that last kilometre and a half, you know, they'll all have a go.
He's got it now, as far as I'm concerned, because you can see they're slowing down at the back there. The blue bridge over the road there is the last kilometre, the Flamme Rouge, and he will know that right now. He'll find just that little bit of extra force in his legs as he gets closer to the line. The guys behind will start to set themselves up and try and think about the sprint for second place. The advantage now is tipped completely and utterly towards this man. Sherwen Knaven, 1,000 metres to go.
Well, he's going to feel pretty good. He's looking over his shoulder underneath his arm there. He doesn't want to make the mistake of losing it now in the last 900 metres as he races towards the line here in Bordeaux. A man who has denied the sprinters their day, because the Breakaway has been in the lead for 181 kilometres, the exact distance of the day's race. No one was ready for the attack from the gun except these 10 men, and this man has finished it off. Sherwen Knaven, who is now riding his 7th Tour de France, just as Tyler Hamilton was yesterday, and like Tyler, he is now getting his first ever stage win. And Paul, he's going to enjoy this. This is a great win for it's a Belgian team, but he's very much a Dutchman, and it's going to be a great relief too to Holland, because they now have a victory in the Tour de France. He is thoroughly delighted. He's won some wonderful races. It's his 22nd win as a professional. He's 32 years of age. Until today, his biggest win was the classic race from Paris to Roubaix. Now he's in Bordeaux, and he's going to enjoy the moment. Time on this occasion is not important to Sherwen Knaven.
Very clever tactical move. He attacked before anybody else, and it's Médéric Klein here in the middle leading them home, but watch out for Salvatore Commesso.
Bassoni is going on the far right of our picture here. Has looked to have got the edge perhaps here. Médéric Klein trying to get through. He's shut out. Mangin is coming through. A little bit of a movement there. Mangin or Bassoni? I think Bassoni.
I think Bassoni just got it in the lime green jersey in the middle there. But the victory completely and utterly going to Holland this afternoon, because that was a very long effort by Sherwen Knaven to solo off the front end of the main field, and he was able to enjoy that because he had 26 seconds on the finishing line. Here's the 10th member of that leading Breakaway, Ivan Para, the Colombian rider on the Kelme team, and he's had a pretty hard ride over the last few kilometers. There's Patrick Lefebvre on the left-hand side. He's the brain behind the team nowadays. He tends not to go into the car as team manager. There's the doctor as well, and interesting to see that these guys have got their stage victory after a stage win in the mountains by Richard Virenque.
Well, just take a look at his face here. The congratulations all round. Everybody wants to win a stage of the Tour de France. Only a few ever do it. Sherwen has got his now. Well, it'll be a while before the peloton come in. We'll take a break. Rejoin us for that in a moment. Welcome back, the Tour de France. We're looking at the peloton, still about 5 or 6 minutes out from the finishing line. Sherwen Knaven having his second cup of tea after winning the stage for Holland and for Quick-Step. Now, Robbie McEwen still very much involved in a head-on battle here for the points in the green jersey with Baden Cook. And before the start today, Frankie Andreu spoke to him about his journey through the Alps and about his plans and tactics of today's stage.
Robbie, we just came out of the Pyrenees. How are you feeling?
I feel all right. I came out of the Pyrenees pretty good. I got over them a lot better than I got over the Alps. I was a bit sick through the Alps and had a lot of trouble, but through the Pyrenees I just seemed to get better each day and made it easy inside the time limit. Even yesterday, for one of the first times, I had to actually wait for the gruppetto.
That's a bonus. I guess the legs are feeling good. Today, will you sit in and try to wait for a field sprint, or will you look for a break that possibly would stay away?
I'm just going to stay in and hope for a sprint, because I look at it this way. If I get in a breakaway and the other contenders for green aren't there, they're going to chase me down anyway. If I do get in a breakaway and happens to stay away, no one wants to take me to the finish. So I just got to sit in there and hope for a sprint. If there's a group away, still going to sprint for whatever points are left at the end. I've got to try and take some points back on Baden.
Will you have the team try to control the race a little bit for those early bonus sprints and possibly to have to do the chase at the finish?
Well, today we're not going to try and control for the intermediate sprints, because the first one's not until 102 kilometres and the next one's at 120, so it's a long time to try and keep together just for those sprints. We're going to try and have a guy in the break if possible. Then the pressure's off us at the back. If we've got no one up there, we're going to have to chase. But we've only got 6 riders left in the race as well.
Are you feeling fast?
I'm feeling pretty good. I want to get the chance to sprint for the win, because I feel quite good, so let's hope there's a sprint. If it's not today, then tomorrow.
Best of luck. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
Well, I guess it's plan B for Robbie McEwen, because the breakaway has succeeded, but it's still extremely important if he wants to continue to challenge for the green jersey that he gets in amongst the first couple of riders over the line. Now we're racing for 11th place. Lance Armstrong using his US Postal Boys to keep him clear of trouble now. He's putting them on the front to keep him safe. He's not interested in the sprint finish. He's just interested in staying safe. Now it's over 6 minutes now since Sherwen Knaven has won the stage, so we still have, of course, the rest of the race to come in. I think we can actually have a look now at the Pacific Life stage results. It's odd, isn't it, when the race is still coming in, but we can. Let's have a look. Here they are, the Pacific Life stage results. Sherwen Knaven getting a win by 17 seconds in the end. It was Bassoni who got the photo on the line. Christophe Mangeon, Leon Van Bon and Salvatore Commesso in 5th. Bit further down, Vincenti Garcia da Costa, Peter Lutenberger most again today. He might make the top 12 now overall. Médéric Klein and Ivan Parra completing the breakaway of 10. Now it's all on who's going to win the bunch sprint. Into the last kilometre, and there's 7 minutes tick by on the finishing line now. Even Lance Armstrong, shadowed of course by the big German Jan Ullrich, keeping out of trouble. Do you want to keep your eyes on the whereabouts of the all-green jersey? Jean-Patrick Nazon is trying to get in on the action as well in those dark-coloured jerseys. Baden Cook has got a lead-out train going here now. He's 3rd in line. It looks like Brad McGee is going to help him out if he can. Robbie McEwen is in there, but he's staying very low because he doesn't have the men to take him to the line. A huge lead out here for Baden Cook. Now there's a lot of elbowing going on back there, because Eric Zabel is just behind McEwen, who is sitting on the wheel now of Baden Cook. Now Brad McGee gives the final lead out, then it is going to be Cookie. Cookie goes, he's taking with him McEwen and Zabel, the top 3 sprinters of the race. Now who can get up? And again McEwen is showing he is very, very fast. Robbie McEwen on the line gets it, and he'll get it off Cook and Zabel. He'll snick a point. Now Paul isn't quite so sure.
I think
we
it
only had the head on.
It might be 2 points. I think Zabel might have just got across the line there in front of Baden Cook, but Baden Cook was led out to perfection. He's a younger rider, and I think he may well have had a hard time recovering through the mountains, and the older boys now are just trying to get their gears taking over.
But it's so typical of what is it being an amazing Tour de France. We have to commentate on the finish there for 11th place, Paul, as if those guys were winning the stage, because everything is still open to Paris.
Everything is completely open. The overall classification is open, as is the green jersey points competition. That is a competition that will not get decided until the final meters of the Champs-Élysées on Sunday. Sherwen Knaven, certainly the great lone winner of the stage, but what a battle it was, even 11th place on the roads of Bordeaux.
There's a pride in those sprinters like you won't believe, and Cookie and Robbie McEwen are intense rivals. Here's the sprint. It's the wheels we'd like to see. But this is Robbie McEwen. Look at his face. Zabel's off to the right. McEwen has got the sprint. It's a question of whether Cookie lost 1 point to him or 2. He was 8 to the good before the start of the day. It could be 7 or even 6 now. What a race. And I think Paul Sherwen said it earlier in the day. That race could be decided in the very last sprint in Paris.
I think it will be. There'll be a big battle for the intermediary points on tomorrow's stage as well, because we have another very flat stage tomorrow as we continue to head up the Atlantic coast. And let's have a look at this from the sky here, because there's Baden Cook leading out from a long way. Robbie McEwen then starting the sprint, and it was a bit confusing just up through the inside there. You can see Eric Zabel is in an ideal position, and Zabel accelerates round the outside. He doesn't have the acceleration to come by Robbie McEwen, but he does have the acceleration to go across the line just in front of Baden Cook. So Baden Cook losing 2 points of his lead there in the sprint. He now still leads the competition, but his advantage has been reduced to 6 points.
Well, let's have a look as they hit the line. Watch the wheel of the second. Oh, we can't see Cook. He's off the back, but I would think it is going to possibly be close. I think he might just have kept it there. We'll have to wait and see what the photo finish reveals. Here's the happiest man of the day, throwing kisses to everybody, and no doubt including his wife Natasha and his daughter Britt, as they race up to, as Sherwen Knaven races up to the line. But that green jersey competition is going to keep this race alive again tomorrow. It's a long way north as we continue to the eve of the big time trial, which is where the battle for yellow will be decided on Saturday. And then on Sunday, we will enjoy massive celebrations into Paris, where these great athletes will finally come home from where they started 3 weeks and 1 day ago.
That was a great win there by Sherwen Knaven. It's nice to see an attacker get a victory like that. But this is going to be a big battle here. Robbie McEwen, although he looked in a bit of difficulty going through the mountains, has certainly bounced back. That's the advantage that an older bike rider has. Once he's come through the mountains, he knows just exactly how to recuperate. He's getting himself back into fighting mode again. He wants to win a stage, but he wants to win the green jersey for the 2nd year in succession.
Well, let's have a look, see if our camera holds with the helicopter shot here. That's often a great guide. Zabel coming very late with a right run on the left there, and Cookie was fading very fast, and I think he's definitely, there's no doubt from that angle, Paul.
No,
he's lost
doubt.
2 points.
No doubt at all. He's 2 points down right now, and his advantage has been reduced by 6 seconds. But
6 points.
6 points.
Yeah.
But this is the man who will celebrate this afternoon. This team have had a great afternoon, and they've had a great Tour de France. A victory in the mountains, a victory on the flat, and the King of the Mountains competition to Richard Virenque.
All right then, Sherwen Knaven gets the win. We haven't seen any of the presentations yet. We think that McEwen, Zabel and Cook was the order over the line. We'll take another short break here on OLN, then join us for the podium presentations at the Tour. And we're back with the Tour de France as we gaze out across the beautiful city of Bordeaux, which was on the very first route back in 1903 when we went round France in just 6 stages. Although I can tell you there were plenty of days off in between the riding. Sherwen Knaven of Holland has brought a smile to all of the Dutch faces, because it's the first victory by a Dutchman, and they will be much happier about that. Holland, by the way, are delighted with Lance Armstrong winning. He's very, very popular in Holland as well. Well, Sherwen has now got a stage win in the Tour de France, and it won't have done a lot to alter the overall classification, because none of the men that mattered left each other's side today, and the gains were not there. Jan Ullrich is still second, 1 day short of the infamous time trial on Saturday. Vinokourov at 2 minutes 45, Zubeldia and Mayo just over 5 minutes behind. It's the latter two names that Tyler Hamilton will be looking to take out when we get to that time trial from Pornic in 48 hours, because there he is sitting in 6th place overall. There is Basso, Morrow, Manthebo and Carlos Sastre at 16:12. and I'm not sure whether we've got it. I don't think we have yet, but I'm pretty sure in 11th place now will be Peter Lutenberger, the rider who was in that breakaway. So he made a big sortie today, coming up from 18th overall. That was you look for those moves occasionally, Paul, and sometimes they work, don't they?
There's very often a move like that in the last part of the Tour de France when somebody manages to get into a breakaway, which gets a big advantage, and they leap up the overall classification. But I think the move of the day was that one by Sherwen and Knaven. Very brave from a group like that to go just 17 kilometers away from the line, because there's always the possibility of the group getting behind, and you can't say the Tour de France is not popular at all anymore, because that is an unbelievable crowd turning out to see this race.
The big US flag right in the middle. Let's save a round of applause then for the man from Holland, Sherwen and Knaven. In his very first year as a professional, he won the National Championship of Holland, and that has been with him really. He's won it twice now. He's won the Paris-Roubaix race. He's now got 22 wins in his career, which began back in 1994. So his 10th season as a professional. Like all the people from Holland, he speaks very good English as well. And a nice trophy too. Everybody wants to win in Bordeaux, and there's some great names have won here over the years of the Tour de France. When we came here in 1903, of course, Maurice Garin was the race leader.
Well, that's a great route by him. That's Wilfred Peters on the far side. Well, not too long ago, they were racing together in races like Paris-Roubaix, and now Wilfred has become the team manager of Quick-Step Davitamont. The overall team manager, by the way, is Patrick Lefebvre, the man responsible for putting this team together. But over the years, he's found that he gets much too nervous sitting in the team car as team manager. In fact, after one successful Paris-Roubaix, he had to be taken to hospital in the evening because he started getting a bit of a heart problem because of the stress, and now he tends to go straight from the start to the finish in the team car and watch it on the television.
Well, if he was watching on the television, I would think the stress would have been just as high today, because he only hovered at around about half a minute, winning in the end by just 17 seconds. But even so, a win is very much a win, and that's the best stage race victory he's ever had in his life. He actually has won overall the Tour of Denmark. It's not a hilly race and would suit his style of riding, but he's had a great tour this year now. He'll be vindicated as he gets a stage win. Massive crowd, Colombian flags, American flags, and wait for us as we get back to the podium, Lance Armstrong, the 10th day in the Maillot Jaune. He's fast approaching the record held by Miguel Indurain, who has 60. I'll have to check, but I think this is his 57th yellow jersey that Lance has now won in a Tour de France, and the Texas flag in full view as well.
Well, Armstrong now just ticking away the days at the Tour de France. He's got a 1 minute and 7 second advantage, and I thought it was rather ominous when he said he sleeps a lot better with a 1 minute and 7 second advantage rather than a 15-second advantage. I have a feeling he's planning something very special for the final individual time trial, and let's not forget, so far he has never actually been beaten. Dance, Lance, dance. The supporters are all over the place for this man. He is becoming very popular. There's a lot of Americans here, but he is becoming this year, Phil, very popular with the French crowd as well.
He certainly is. He carries off those much wanted lines, the Credit Lyonnais lines. They rather like trophies. They put them up in the windows of their team vehicles, you know. The man with the most is obviously the most successful. But Lance still 67 seconds, all of his lead intact. He feels very happy with that sort of a gap and very confident. But the rumour is that so does Jan Ullrich, confident that he can remove those 67 seconds in the last time trial on Saturday. Baden Cook is still in the green jersey. He is 6 points to the good. That is all. And just a sprint along the road tomorrow is worth 6 points. And I think that's why, Paul, he is not looking too happy with himself.
He looks a bit worried, but in fact yesterday, about 40 kilometres from the end, he was involved in a small crash when he touched the wheel of a rider in front of him, and that might have affected him just a little bit. You can see the scars just on his right knee there, the left-hand side of the picture, and that could well have slowed him down just a little bit. But he doesn't look quite as confident as he did a couple of days ago, and I'll tell you one thing, the mountains in this year's Tour de France have fatigued an awful lot of bike riders.
Well, I have to say, Paul, that he's not looking at all happy. He's being polite, but he's going to get back and he's going to have to sort it out. Well, as we look across Bordeaux, I think Frankie Andreu has managed to catch up now with Sherwen and Knaven. Frankie.
Sherwen, congratulations. From the start, was it your plan to make the breakaway?
Yeah, we talked last evening with each other, with Bramati and me and some other riders of the team, and we said, yeah, we're gonna attack at kilometer 0, and that's what we did. And we were in the break with 10, and in the beginning we had to ride very fast to stay in the front. But after 30-40 kilometers, we had 1 minute, and then went to 15 minutes, and so then I knew we stay in front.
When you were in the break, did you feel like you had the legs to be able to win today? Did you feel good?
Yeah, I felt very good, and yesterday I took a little bit easy in the mountains, and in the beginning of the tour I said this day is a possibility for me to win. And
so you picked this day all the way back from the start of the tour?
Yeah, because there are not so many stages that are good for me, because I'm not a climber, and the first week is always a sprint, and I knew the 4 days I can win, and this was one of it. And
you took a chance going with 15 kilometers to go. Was that your decision, Wilfred Peters' decision, or it was just a gamble?
Yeah, it's always a gamble, but it was a decision of Wilfred Peters. He said, yeah, you have to try something, but don't wait too long. And I had my doubts, but yeah, I still did it, and yeah, it was perfect tactic, I think.
I'd agree. I think it worked out perfect. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thanks. Thank you.
Well, absolutely wonderful for him. We've seen him race for many years around the world, as we now wait for the podiums to continue here. Sherwen Knaven, and so he planned to win here, Paul, before the tour even started. That was interesting.
It's amazing how many riders actually do that, Phil, and this man doesn't have to worry too much either. He's a teammate of the man who won today, and Mr. Popular in France, Richard Virenque, basically the winner of the King of the Mountains competition. All he has to do is get himself to Paris.
Another polka dot jersey introduced into the tour in 1975, so we knew who was the leader of the King of the Mountains, and the first winner then was Lucien van Impe of Belgium. But the competition has been around since 1933.
He's going to join a very select group of riders at the end of this Tour de France when he wins it for the 6th time, because it's only been done by 2 other men, Federico Barmontes, the Eagle of Toledo, and of course Lucien van Impe, the great climber from Belgium, from the small town of Erpenmeren.
You see a lovely crowd here. We expected a lot of people here in Bordeaux, and we haven't been disappointed, of course, because as this race creeps closer to Paris, the intense interest just gets more and more.
It's unbelievable. We expect, as we get closer to Paris, to have a clearer picture of the race, but it's actually becoming a lot more confused. We won't know anything about the overall classification until Saturday night, and we won't know anything about the green jersey points race until Sunday night.
Well, Baden Cook did not look happy with himself. He had a perfect lead out, 2 teammates taking to the line. He simply wasn't fast enough. Robbie, you see the older man, he's come through the mountains, I think, a lot better than Baden. I think he's going to win that title. I think he's going to take it off Baden.
It's going to be a very close battle, but I do agree with you. It is important in the last week of the race to have a lot of experience. Robbie McEwen has certainly got that, and you could see the power of Robbie McEwen's sprint in the second part of that sprint there.
All right, thanks, Paul. Back to the podium as we wander around Bordeaux. There he is, and this will be Denis Menchov. The iBenesto.com boys have had an up and a down day, because Mancebo almost lost his high place overall halfway through the race. He had, but he saved it for the moment, while Denis Menchov is still and far and away the best rider in this young riders competition. Menchov riding high in the overall classification. He's 11th place, and he is only 17 minutes behind.
Well, he's a great bike rider, and he's a rider who in the past won himself the Tour de l'Avenir, a race for the hopefuls, and that was back in 2001. And I think in years to come he'll be a rider we need to take note of. It's amazing how many of the Russian riders on iBenesto.com are doing so well.
All right, well, we are going to take a break, but do stay with us, because the riders are in early today. It gives us a chance to have a lot of analysing to do on today's stage, and we'll have another look too at that great ride by Tyler Hamilton. See you in a moment on OLN.
And so a great finish here in Bordeaux, France, stage 17 of the 2003 Tour de France, with Sherwen Knaven making a very bold move, 17 kilometers out, a solo attempt, and it worked for him this time. Sherwen Knaven taking the stage when he's followed by Paolo Bonsani, Christophe Menyen, Leon Van Boom, and then Salvatore Comesso running out the top 5. In 6th, it's Acosta, followed by Lutenberger, Klan, Ram de Groot, and Ivan Para wrapping out the top 10. Let's go ahead and look at the general classifications here. Lance Armstrong still on top. Not much change here. Jan Ulrich following him by 67 seconds. Alexander Vinokurov in 3rd. Aymar Zubeldia in 4th. Ivan Mayo in 5th. American Tyler Hamilton right behind him in 6th. Ivan Basso, Christoph Moro, Francisco Mancebo, and Carlos Sastre rounding out the top 10. So, Bob, we were talking about big breakaways earlier today. We saw a big breakaway at the 0 kilometers. They decided to go out, a 10-man breakaway, and then what a bold move by Knaven.
Yes,
17 kilometers to go.
That was a great move, very astute move, Knaven. The Dutch riders always very tricky. They know the tactics as well as anybody, because they have a lot of race situations like this. The Tour de France different than the other Grand Tours, the Giro d'Italia and the Tour of Spain. Both of them 3 weeks, same sort of physiological effort, but nobody is willing to give up on a stage in the Tour. So the first week in the Tour, you have big field gallops. All the sprinters teams are fresh, bring their fast guy to the line. Dominated this year in the Tour by the Italian fast man, Alessandro Petacchi on Farsa Bortolo. He went out of the race in the mountains. But then the Tour, what happens is that there's no ever any sections of piano. You can see the breakaway, they're starting to attack each other. They're chasing hard in the peloton, so there's no easy days on the Tour. You always have a long breakaway, and that starts to disintegrate towards the finish. No one willing to cooperate with each other. The strongest man and the smartest, Serveus Knaven, making the attack there. Took him a long time to cut the tether to the other riders in the breakaway, none of them wanting to let him go, because they know once he gets ahead of steam up again, a guy that can win a classic has a tremendous amount of power. So Knaven was able to get the gap and drop away his companions in the breakaway. Very good move, being encouraged there by his team director, Wilfredo Peters, another big star of Paris-Roubaix and a great Belgian bike racer in his own right, encouraging Knaven all the way to the finish line, shouting for him. It's a big win for Quick Step. It's a new team, big program, a lot of great bike racers on that team. They've won a stage already with Richard Virenque, but there was no reason not to try again as we get towards Paris. And there's chances are fewer and fewer. Everybody wants to be in the breakaway. A rider like Peter Lutenberger moves up a bunch of spots on GC. If he can get in another breakaway like this, he'll move into the top 10 on GC. So that was a great little breakaway, and we see that only in the Tour. In the Giro, people are willing to go a little bit easier to the finish, but the Tour is so prestigious, everyone wants to win a stage. Subsequently, no easy stages at all. They're all very hard.
Let's talk about the green jersey and the sprinter situation here. Baden Cook remains in green, but Robbie McEwen right in there too. Zabel was not too far behind.
Well, you saw a big, huge sprint for 11th place. 10 guys up the road. Usually guys are, after all the prizes have been given out on the stage, they just allow the peloton to come across the line in most other races. But because the green jersey battle, so prestigious, all those guys that are going for it, Zabel, McEwen, and Baden Cook, who has the jersey, just a few points ahead of Robbie McEwen at this point. You can see he's 169 to 163 points. Only 6 points separating those riders, and another just 12 points down to Eric Zabel. So Baden Cook has a very tenuous grasp on the green jersey, and they're going to go for every point that they can all the way through to probably the line of the stage finish in Paris on the last day, and it's just a great battle. We saw it the year before last between Stuart O'Grady and Eric Zabel. Eric Zabel lifting the green jersey off of Stuart O'Grady on the last day, last sprint of the race. Very exciting, and it's just such a great honor to win that or any jersey in the Tour, that the racing is flat out all the time.
We're going to have to wait and see, and you heard Phil and Paul also talking about Baden Cook not too happy that there's only 6 points differing them right now.
Absolutely.
Well, when we come back, Phil and Paul are going to join us here on set. Don't go away. You're watching the Tour here on OLN. And welcome back to OLN. Well, the 2003 Tour de France continues. Never a boring day in this Tour, that is for sure, with Serveus Knaven taking the stage win.
Yep.
Surprise you at all?
Well, we know Serveus is an opportunist. That's how he rides his races, and that's how he's won 22 of them. And he'd obviously sat with the map before he went to the start in Paris, decided which stages he thought his ability suited. and today was the one he decided to give it his best shot. Doesn't always work out, of course, but he planned to attack at 0 kilometre, and that's a long escape, and he couldn't have had a better combination with 10 riders getting together. That's a good group.
And well, a lot of people were watching today's stage, and it was an exciting stage. The big story still, too, is Tyler Hamilton's bold move yesterday.
Everybody's talking about
it. Yeah.
Everybody, even though the Tour de France is saying just what a magnificent race that was by Tyler Hamilton. A lot of people questioning whether he actually had a broken collarbone, and he's actually gone out and said, hasn't he, Bob, to everyone, you want to come and see the X-rays, you can come and see them after the Tour de France. He was very upset about Walter Godefroot, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. It was a lot of exaggeration about the minimal amount of his injuries, but there's no way you can say that he hadn't broken his collarbone and has been putting in a spectacular
he got away
ride
soon after. I mean, he came together on the Col de Soudet, and then once he caught up with the leaders, he then decided it was time to leave them all behind on the Côte de Saint-Laurent. He was a great rider, you know, to have the cheek to do this with 88 kilometres to go, 55 miles, when he finally gets away. This is when he came up to the group. At the time, I think it was 15 riders here, Bob.
Well, it was incredible that he was dropped on the first...
Initially dropped, yeah.
Initially, they went so fast at the start. Tyler was struggling at that moment, gets right out the back. He spent almost the whole day out in the wind, and he still had the energy to hold off a charging peloton for so long. Unbelievable ride by Tyler Hamilton, a real exploit.
What I think is impressive is you look at the face on the riders who were chasing him behind her. They were absolutely on the rivet. A full team. Team Telecom is no mean team. They were once ranked #1 team in the world, and they could do nothing for 25 kilometres to eat into this man's advantage. He did lose a little bit over the last 10Ks, but that's quite acceptable.
Well, just like Knaven today, he's ridden 7 tours as well, and he gets his first stage win, Tyler Hamilton. This was yesterday, and it was a remarkable... When you're sitting in 7th place overall, it's twice as hard to rip away from the field who would try to pull you back. As always, the rip-roaring sprint for the places, and thankfully Paul Sherman's proved wrong because he picked Eric Zabel to win, and he only finished 2nd. What a shame.
But you know, Eric's a tough bike rider, and I think Bob will agree with me that the bike riders who come into the last week of the Tour de France are special men, because those are the guys who've recovered. They've saved themselves over the mountains. But this was a moment of nice pleasure for everybody to see. Congratulations coming, I suppose you could say, from 2 local boys, because they spend most of their cycling season living over the border in Girona.
I thought at first, Bob, they were fighting over who was going to get the line, because they both won one. But apparently not.
No, there's no fight for the lines. Between the two of them, they have a lot.
But this is, I mean, Tyler and Lance are really good friends, aren't they? Whereas the other riders who've left Tyler's side haven't really kept the friendship.
Yes, Lance is a tough man. He's the best friend you could ever have. He is also the very worst enemy you could ever dream of having. And Tyler has, luckily for him, remained friends with Lance. He didn't put his riders on the front to chase him down. He let the other teams do that were in danger of losing places on GC. You could tell Euskadi started chasing right away. Tyler blew them all away. They were right on the rivet, barely able to make it to the finish. Telecom chase, quick step chase, none of them could. Even the Fossa Bortolo riders for Ivan Basso tried to chase, but Tyler was just too strong. Fabulous ride, unbelievable.
We've got to think back admitted they made a big mistake.
Yeah, we've got to think back to a breakaway like the breakaway of Claudio Chiappucci in the Alps in the 90s, who went away over, I think, 4 big mountain passes and survived on his way all the way over to Sestriere.
They were massive. That was a great ride, though. That was exceptional, to ride all those mountains. He was chased all the way home in the end. I can't remember the name of the guy who finished 2nd. It began with V, but Indurain was 3rd, and the 2nd guy didn't matter anyway, because he got 2 second places that year in the mountains. That left him nowhere in the overall classification. But as we're thinking about Indurain, he was flying, and he couldn't get up to Chiappucci that day.
Actually, nearly cracked on that final climb because he put a lot of pressure into the chase behind Claudio Chiappucci. It was actually threatening his place in the overall classification at the time. And we actually thought on the final few kilometres of the ascent up to Sestriere that Miguel Indurain was going to crack, but he didn't.
No, he didn't. Tyler Hamilton didn't either, except his collarbone. He cracked that.
Well, yes, he did that. We know that for sure. Yeah, let's get back to the 2003 Tour. I know I've asked you all this question many times, but what's your favorite moment so far? I mean, there have been so many.
Well, mine was when Bob bought a round of drinks.
Which never happened. It never happens.
I was never there.
No, you wouldn't. Oh, no, he made sure there was nobody there when he offered.
He couldn't afford 4 drinks, only 3.
Favourite moment, heck, Kirsten.
You answer quickly while I'm thinking.
Yeah, well, there's so many. I mean, my most unfavourite moment was the loss of Joshua Bolocki, because I thought when that man fell and went out, after the way he'd attacked Lance so well and hurt him, I thought we'd lost the main protagonist to take this race away from Lance. Not that I want Lance to lose, but I want to see a good bike race, which indeed I believe Lance does as well. But up came other challenges, and this race has gone from one day to the next. Now, I wouldn't like to pick a favourite moment, but I think I could name you 10.
Oh, yeah, I think I could, too. We're going to have to take a short break right now here on OLN, but when we come back, we're going to look at that fabulous Stage 15 on top of Luz Ardidon and Lance Armstrong, the man. We'll be back. Stay with us. And welcome back to Bordeaux, France. It was the finishing point for Stage 17. The stage winner surveys Knaven. Well, from Stage 17 back to Stage 16 and Tyler Hamilton, and let's go way back to Stage 15. It was 4 days ago because it was before the rest day, but still a very memorable stage with Lance Armstrong and him going down, almost going down a second time, and then coming back, digging down deep and taking the win.
It reminds me of a similar crash to Alex Zulino on Vermi Ridge many years ago, when somebody dropped a handbag in front of him and he fell off. And somebody wrote to me and asked for the name of the man so they could go and punch him. Isn't that amazing?
I hope you didn't give it to them.
No, I didn't. No, I still use the story.
It still amazes me, though, that everybody's been after Lance Armstrong, and then a 10-year-old girl on the side of the road on accident takes him down, takes him out.
I think the scariest thing was, in fact, that bag was given out by the publicity in front of the race, and it was actually belonging to the company Credit Lyonnais, who is the sponsor of the yellow jersey. Now, that is weird. Armstrong, though, he was definitely on a mission, and everybody had mentioned in the morning that he had the big day face on. And strangely enough, the first big attack came on the climb before the Col de Tourmalet. Nobody expected that, but Jan Ullrich knew that there was going to be danger on the final climb of the day.
I honestly think that Ullrich was afraid of Luz Ardiden. He was afraid of Lance, because if Lance can smell the finish, he goes rather like a cannibal. He gets very aggressive. So quite clearly the move was to attack Lance on the Tourmalet. And when Ullrich attacked, I thought he got him at first, Bob.
Oh, absolutely. He put in a vicious acceleration there, put Lance in a little bit of trouble, but absolutely cracked this man wide open. Alexander Vinokurov, at the time, was only 3 seconds behind Ullrich and only 18 seconds behind Armstrong. Vinokurov he would come back just for a moment to the front, but that was basically the end of his chances to win.
That was the attack of Mayo.
This is on the final climb to Luz Ardiden. Mayo attacks, and Lance Armstrong is right on the wheel and puts Ullrich into immediate danger.
Yeah, Ullrich is always slow to respond, but he gets up to top-end speed pretty quickly, and he seemed to have it under control. But this is what has made this race so extraordinary. On the steep climbs, it wasn't one man showing how great he was. Oh, and there you go. It struck me that. I wasn't ready for that.
Even watching it again, it's pretty dramatic. But I think the big thing here is the fact that Jan Ullrich, when he saw that, he didn't take advantage of it. And in fact, you can just see the yellow bag there. It just pulls the handlebars of Armstrong into the inside, and he flips over the top. Ivan Mayo rode into Armstrong's bike very dramatically, and only afterwards did we learn that, in fact, the chainstay of that bicycle was cracked 3/4 of the way through.
Yeah, that's the bottom tube that goes out to the chain area, and if that had gone right through, Lance would have had a very big collision. Now wait for this one, because this is this the one where his gears slip?
It's either his gears or his foot falls off the pedal.
I think it's his foot, actually.
I don't think he's fully engaged. He jumped back up on the bike so quickly that he hadn't re-engaged into the pedal. He was on top of the pedal, but the spring clicked in, and he
very
loses his pedal there and almost goes down again. Absolutely insane. Lance Armstrong, when he fell the first time, was riding right next to the crowd. Now, he knows where the crowd is. He's done 100 climbs in the Alps and the Pyrenees in the Tour. Look at that replay. Both feet off the pedals, Bob, almost going down.
It's only a man in fine form has got the ability and the agility to recover from something like that. You've got to be on top of your game to do that. If you're slightly tired, he would have gone down a second time very heavily. Tyler Hamilton tried to calm down the troops here right now, because nobody in the sport of cycling wants to take advantage of an opponent who's had a problem. Armstrong, once he came back in, though, he was on fire.
Yeah, he was.
He was fired up, absolutely. He rides so close to the crowd that it's very dangerous, because he needs that adrenaline from them. I think he smells the blood of the people being excited. And just like a shark looking for some chum in the ocean, when he's on the attack, he needs the people. That's why he rides so close. He's totally insane.
And
he doesn't have to do that.
And you said, too, Bob, that even after that crash, it seems like every corner he took after that, he rode even closer to the crowd.
You just
but I
have to
noticed
love
the crowd were actually starting to get out of the way.
Yeah, I would, too. I would,
The reason he rode close to the crowd was because he was asking them, did he know who did that to him as he got the name? So he'd check him out later.
That poor little girl, too. I'm sure she felt
There you are. There's the
terrible.
race lead, and that's a fabulous result for Lance Armstrong. I think when we look back after next Sunday, we'll say that's where he won the Tour de France.
Oh, yeah. He's
we'll
put in
see.
some amazing moments. I mean, going cross country.
Yes.
When was that? That was a week ago, at least, right?
Into Gap, yeah.
That was in the road into Gap. But you know what? I think the one man who's impressed both Bob, myself, and Phil is Jan Ullrich, because a lot of people disregarded Jan Ullrich as a challenger. Lance Armstrong never disregarded him. From the start of the Tour de France, he always said, this man is going to be dangerous. And that's why we had the acceleration on Alpe d'Huez, because he wanted that buffer. If they hadn't dropped Jan Ullrich on the stage to Alpe d'Huez, Jan Ullrich would be leading the Tour de France this evening.
I'm very happy for Jan. It's been a return out of the doldrums.
Oh, yeah.
Life is good again.
He's definitely made this tour exciting. Well, we have 3 stages to go. Tomorrow, stage 18, Paul.
Ooh, flat, flat, flat.
Yes.
The order of the day is completely and utterly flat. It's a very long stage as well. We continue going up towards the north and making a long trek up to Paris. The riders leaving Bordeaux after an overnight stop onto the town of Saint-Maximin-l'École, and it's the first time the race has ever been there.
Well, and of course, we are going to be here for all of you tomorrow. We are back tomorrow starting at 8:30 for the pre-race show. Then we've got live coverage of Stage 18. It begins at 9 a.m. If you happen to miss that, well, you can always catch us on our primetime coverage, which begins at 8 p.m. And you can also join us online at olntv.com for updates and information. Also articles from Bob Roll, Paul Sherwen, and Phil Liggett right here. Well, we have stage 17 in the bag. Just 3 stages to go in the 2003 Tour de France. For Phil, Paul, Frankie, Bob, and our entire OLN crew, we say goodnight. We'll see you tomorrow morning.